budgeted about $320,000 out of a different fund to also go towards the jail. So when you hear a number of 1.3 million generically, we're referring to that aggregate amount available in budget capacity from both funds to put towards the jail. Now, there's a number of variables that could go into this that affects the bottom line. One is, thank you, one is the amount of money that ends up being in that jail facility fund that could be used for either a down payment or upfront costs. Maybe there's some consulting fees, maybe there's site work prep, architecture, financial consultants. That stuff could be paid for with some of that cash, or not. It could all be financed, and that money could be used as a down payment to bring down the amount of the project and bring it within our budget limitation. So we're very fortunate in the fact that we have that $2.3 million amount saved. We also have a financing option through the USDA that has a very reasonable rate of interest. I think the last time that was quoted was maybe 3.5. Okay.
Right.
I had 3.75, so just 0.25% less than that makes a big difference in itself. And that may drop again by the time we get to a point where we have to make a decision on financing. For every 0.25%, that frees up approximately $400,000 towards the project cost. So if that drops and we keep everything else the same, that could give us an additional $400,000 to work with for expenses, if that makes sense. Now, we can also pick the amount of time it takes to pay the loan back. Now, I had projections based on a 20-year payback, and that kind of coincides with our revenue stream. But we could also do 30 years, 40 years, 26 years, 31 years. It doesn't particularly matter with the USDA, as long as we have some kind of plan or schedule to pay that money back.
Right, the USDA presented that it's a possibility of going out 40 years or paying it off just as quickly as we can. So, and of course that would save us on interest, and there's no early payoff penalty or anything like that. So that's, and there's also been talk that there is possible grants for the expense that would be incurred as far as feasibility studies and so on. So that's a positive as well.
So generally, when we're talking about finances, we're in a decent position, unlike some counties where they're starting at zero. They maybe haven't raised taxes yet. They maybe don't have $2 million saved. They maybe don't have options in the area with land or build sites. So there's a number of things that we should be very thankful that we have in place right now. The big thing to remember, though, is there's the variables of time for payback, the interest rate, the size of the project, of course, and how much you put down. Those are all factors that could, at the end of the day, tweak that payment amount in the budget. But we do have somewhat of a limit at the moment of, generically speaking, 1.3 million per year.
And with that being said, and we're going to just kind of work around, anybody's got something, jump in there, obviously. The tax that was implemented is a 20-year tax. There's been talk of that being expanded. We are in the beginning of year 16. So that's part of our concern, is when that tax runs out at the end of 20 years, how do we make up the difference or find the money, or where's it going to come from? So that's a concern.
And I will interject here. When it was started, it was actually a 22-year tax. Mm-hmm. So we're not at year 16 at the moment. We've got an extra 2 years in there, just for clarity.
Thank you. And there had been some talk of possibly expanding that to 25, but no one from state legislation has given us that information or provided us that information, so we're stuck at the 22 right now. So thank you for that correction, Tom. So as you can see, moving forward, this money will run out at some point. So we've got to make sure that if we do something, it is paid off in that period of time before this tax goes away. Okay. You have anything else, Polly? Because I'm going to kind of go tell people what we got up here on the, or do you want to I'm sorry.
No,
You
no,
had your
you're fine.
financial plan. Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
it's just, Anton had figured, and you guys all have that, I don't have, I figured a different one as well. He figured his on the 20 years, which is, you know, like we said, we want to keep within that time period. I figured mine at the full 40 years, which with the possibility of hopefully paying it off early, like we did the EMS building. Mine was the principal was 26 million, and Anton's, let's see, yours has, what, the 22? Is that correct, Anton, with your,
20.3 million.
right, but with the down, okay, with the down payment, all right. So, that's basically what we've,
So we have two different options on the table. Anton's come up with about 20.3 million.
and mine was with
26.
no down payment, just figured at the straight 26 million.
So that's what the council's telling the commissioners that we have to work with to look towards a project. So I guess at that time, I'm going to bring up Chris from Elevatus, if you want to explain. Over here on the wall, he has worked with Sheriff White, myself. He's got a plan. This particular jail is being put up in Lawrence County, Missouri. It is a reduced scale from our original. And Chris, tell me to be quiet, you jump in, because you know a lot more about that than I do.
You're doing fine. I'd also like to introduce Corey Dietz with Elevatus. Been with the company for quite
10 years.
So,
We appreciate you guys coming down. Been here before.
Yep.
Hopefully we can make a little headway here.
So just to kind of give everybody up to date, we were back here in November or September it was, and actually a few of you come up and toured the jail when I was sheriff in Fulton County that we had built. You guys seemed to like that one, but it was 200 beds, and it's about 50,000 square feet and total with admin and detention and whatnot. Plus you have your other site, and you need enough room for your parking, deliveries, and any future expansion. So after having that conversation and working with our colleague back here, Dan Zerner, Garmon, kind of ran a estimated price on that. I think we were at Commissioner meeting somewhere between 30 and 40 million is what closer to 40 throughout. So anyway, with that being said,
Chris, can I get you to speak up just a
Sure.
little bit?
I apologize. So anyway, with that keeping in mind, with the budget constraints and whatnot, talking with Sheriff, we had done this project in Lawrence County, Missouri. It's about 30,000 square feet. It's 120
beds.
20 beds. It come in at Lawrence County roughly, Corey, you better probably answer that question better than me on that. But
Total project cost was about 22 million.
and it's soon to be completed in May.
Correct.
So that's more in line of what we're looking at here today, budget figure wise.
But that was probably bid 18,
2 years ago.
24 months ago,
Yes,
too.
yeah.
So you have to figure in your cost of escalation, construction cost, so on and so forth. Carroll County, Indiana is building one very similar to that, same basic design. And that's roughly, I think I asked Greg, it was the other day, it was about just right at 25 million. So, and they're broke ground 6 months ago. So, kind of give you a little bit of an idea about where it's at.
And then you say it's a 120 bed facility, which is what we've kind of asked over the last 2 or 3 years as we went through this. Brian, can I have you jump in here, please? We currently are staffing about, what, 45 to 50 prisoners? Is that
45 to 60 is typically our range right now.
okay?
Our average is closer to the 45, but we have several months, typically in the summer months, where we're in the 60s. Now, keep in mind that jail that we currently have was built originally for 35 inmates. That's what the original count was. Now, we have since done some additions to it to where we can stack them. So we have 2 people in a cell, same size cell that was designed for one. So that's why we can get to that number where we can get the 45 to 60 range, which is typical. I believe in years past, we've had as many as 90, but they are sleeping on floors and in these things that are called boats. Those are exceptions, that's not very common, but you got to keep in mind that when we are housing inmates, DOC requires us that we have to have classification. And that's why there are certain numbers. We're not supposed to have over 80% capacity in a jail. That number is 57 in our jail. Anything over 57, we are unable to classify inmates. And Bill knows a lot more about this than I do because this is kind of his baby. The problem you get with that is you're putting inmates who should not be together based on their charges. You're putting them together, which creates a very volatile environment. Bad things start to happen within the facility. Fights break out, which puts our staff at risk, inmates at risk. We have to care for all their medical, which puts a bigger burden on our county budget as well. So that's the reason that we have those numbers in place, and we have to abide by them.
Could you explain a little bit to the audience and to us as well what you have got into this plan right here? I know you've worked it, you've tweaked it, you and I have talked about it.
I have. I went over this, and Chris, first of all, when we went up and looked at Chris's jail in Fulton County, it's a 243, I think is the number you have, 243 beds? 230, okay. That jail is being built today for $36 million. Okay, that is not the jail. We were not from the start. We have never said that we wanted that many beds. We have no need for that many beds. That has never been addressed. We have said that 120 to 125 is what we are looking at. That's what's feasible for us, what we need. We do not need beyond that. So when I talked to Chris regarding a similar drawing of his jail that was a 125 bed facility, and I said, Chris, we need to trim fat off of this. What can we do to reduce the cost and the footprint of your footprint jail that's only 125 versus the 230? What can we do to trim fat off of it and make it cheaper? I had drawn some stuff up. I'm not an architect. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I was pointing out things in that drawing that we did not need. It was not something that our county needs. Great for them, but their setup is a little bit different than what Owen County has. We discussed it, and then he showed me this plan that was from Lawrence County, Missouri. Again, this is a 120-bed facility. Some of the things that I see, this has a lot more office space than what we have to house. We don't have the need for that many offices. We do need offices, but not quite the way this is set up. So I had went through and I made some drawings, took out some different walls, opened some different areas up. One thing we lack is a training facility. We do not have an area on our property to where we can have in-house training. So this does provide a lot of the things that we were looking for, but it also has some stuff that we don't. Chris had explained that those are interior walls. They can easily be changed, and that's the least expensive part of the building. The most expensive part of any of these facilities is the holding area where we put inmates. I just talked to Dan Zerner from Garmong, and he said, and Chris out in the hallway, and he said, you're looking at about 90% of the entire cost of a jail is the holding facility where inmates are housed. The rest of it, that's the administrative part, is about 10% of the total cost of the structure. So, you know, I know there's been talk in the past regarding, well, we'll just do the pod system. Well, the pod system is 90% of this cost. you know, and I'm not saying that we don't need the pod system, obviously it's coming with the jail, but if it's 10% difference and we get a whole facility that will allow for future expansion, then that's what we need to look at. You know, we need to prepare for the future, not just look at today and try to fix a problem we have today only. We have to look so that our kids and our grandkids aren't having to revisit this same problem that we have now, and they're burdened with it again, and that tax would be implemented again. We want to eliminate that issue as soon as we can, sir.
What is the current, so I would say that when this last jail was built, the life expectancy of it was 30 years or so. When you make the comment about having to revisit, my assumption in my head is that once this thing is paid for and, you know, maybe 10 to 15 years afterwards, something's going to have to be done.
This is a 70-year rated facility. The difference of this facility versus ours is this can be expanded. So you can add another pod system to these guys' designs. So instead of having to build a new jail like we do now, because we don't, it's not capable of an expansion, this one is, which makes it real easy. Then you're just putting another pod system on. You're not looking at admin side, you're not looking at booking side, you're not looking at any of that stuff. It's simply the pod system. Did I answer your question, sir?
It did. I'd like to add something to it. We've talked about it, and the commissioners have talked about it. In this particular plan, we would like to see, first of all, that has a, I'm going to call it a war room, Chris, if that's good enough.
Meeting room, 30 minutes.
Large meeting room, probably 3 times the size of this commissioner's room, at least double. That's something that this county does not have. We cannot host a meeting and accommodate people like we should. And this room is outstanding for those type of things. So not only is this a correctional facility, but it is a facility for the community. It can be, if we have an emergency, we have tornado, EMA, whatever, this room would be used for that. We've also talked about housing emergency management in this building. Also the coroner's office in this building. Right now, those are held in separate buildings. We struggle when we have an emergency in the county to get everybody together in a decent area. Right now, we still have a meeting room down here on the side street of the EMA and the old health building. I personally was involved in some of the tornado problems that we've had in the last few years, and there were so many vehicles down through there, it was chaos. At least with something like this, everybody could get into the meeting room. We had a situation, I think, Sheriff, with a missing person here a while back.
We did. We had a missing child back in July. Sorry, my allergies are bad, it's driving my eyes crazy. And we had several agencies involved in the search for this missing girl. The problem we have is our room to meet is about this big. And I had 4 agencies to include Indiana Clearinghouse for Missing and Exploited Children. I had the Fusion Center there, who has access to information to help us deal with FBI files and stuff like that. I had about 18 officers that were there to help coordinate and look for a missing child. And we couldn't sit in one room and discuss this. We could not try to figure out the best plan of action. Not to mention firefighters that are there, rescue, conservation officers for boats going up and down the river. When you're trying to work and you're trying to hopefully save someone's life, and it requires a lot of resources, we have no place to do it. We have nowhere that we can sit down with the equipment we need, not just anywhere. It can't just be, you know, on the tailgate of a truck somewhere, which sometimes that's what we're stuck with. But you can't do that. That's not how law enforcement works. That's not how emergency services work. But that's what we're stuck with, and it becomes very difficult to do your job and to do it right. You know, I don't know what to tell you about that. War rooms are important. You know, Chris's war room was phenomenal. His one wall is nothing but a marker board. He can tell you where every single person is in the county because he's got the room to write it down. I have a marker board that's this big, literally, that big. I have nowhere to put a marker board. I don't have any wall space to hang a marker board. The only wall one I've got has schedules on it, has vehicle rotation on it. You know, these are important aspects when you're trying to solve crimes or you're trying to save someone's life. You know, we're always the ones that are in the middle of all this mix. And we're the first ones to be criticized when it's not done to someone's liking. You know, we don't have the tools. We're not looking for a Taj Mahal. We're just looking for a place to be able to work. That's what we need. And if it's your child that's missing, or if it's your elderly grandpa with dementia that's missing, who wandered off to go mushroom hunting because he forgot where he's at, don't you want us to have a facility to be able to do it? Isn't it important? I guarantee if it's one of your kids, you will want us to have the equipment we need. I guarantee it.
Thank you for that, Ryan. And one other point, we talked about the coroner's office. Joel's a liaison to the coroner, and I'm gonna let him elaborate on that. Most people don't even know where the coroner's office is at or building's at. It's best that you probably don't.
Well, I would share with the general public where it's at, and I hope they will find out or have to know. It's terrible. It's pathetic. Our coroner does one of the best jobs there is right now, but she has to farm a lot of her work out because we don't have the facility to do it in. Sheriff's new design brings that, equips this new facility with a coroner's facility that can do this work. I'm not gonna go into specifics, just I hope that none of you have to know where it's actually at. And if you don't, well, you're probably better off. But this facility, like Brian said, is not a Taj Mahal by any stretch of the imagination, but it's incorporating enough of these items that really make this county pop when it comes to emergency response. So, you know, it's definitely a decent looking drawing. I think it's a wonderful situation. I believe wholeheartedly this is, you know, these items need to be incorporated into structure.
And by incorporating the EMA and the coroner into this particular building, we eliminate overhead. We shut down 2 buildings, we have less utilities, we put it into one facility. Right now, we're not doing that. So it does have an opportunity for us to save some money. So, Chris, is there anything else you want to add to this? If not, I'll bring Dan up.
Well, I would just say this design, again, without any consultation with Commissioner's Council or the Sheriff, I mean, we were talking about it, and this is a design that we had done for once in Carroll County. I was going to let Corey kind of elaborate about our background and detention, and our history.
Can I ask a quick question? What's the population of Lawrence County, Missouri?
Roughly about 27,000.
So they're just a little bigger than Owen County?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when the sheriff come and toured mine, as you felt it is, yeah, we had that discussion pretty much, again, Lawrence County sounded like Owen County or Fulton County. Rural farming communities, light manufacturing, and they were kind of in the same boat. They had a smaller jail than what we have or had. So, from that standpoint, but I'll let Corey kind of give you a background on what we're doing as far as Illinois and our background and detention design.
Thank you. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but what I do want to elaborate on is what we have found successful for a lot of the county clients that we're working on is starting with a floor plan that has already been designed. There's really no need to reinvent the wheel. And as architects, the only thing we really know how to do is save you money on our fees. The construction costs are continuing to go up. You know, materials are going up, labor's getting short. It's all these concerns, but what we can do is save you on what the architect has done already. And then we pass that savings on to the county. So in a case like Fulton County, where Chris's jail was, we've replicated that design 6 times. So there are 6 other counties in Indiana that have used that design and have saved substantially on architecture fees just because that's where we know That's where we can start saving money right away. So that's a commitment that Elevatus has made. Again, we know these aren't popular projects. We know that they're not, necessarily the most fun or the Taj Mahals to do, but they're necessary. And that's what we've completely found out. I mean, jails have been around since saloon doors. So, I mean, all we got to do is kind of, and sadly, some of them still look like there's saloon doors on there. So all we want to do is try to modernize them, give a safe and secure environment for the sheriff to operate in, but also then protect the inmates. And that's part of the strategy as well. I mean, some of our background, I mean, we are focused in education and justice. Those are our two core markets, probably make up 90% of our work. What I've found is a lot of that hybrid environment. We want to make our schools safer, more secure. So we have our jail staff, our jail designers overlooking school shoulders, but on the reverse, jails want to be more rehabilitative and more programmatic. So how can we incorporate small spaces to really rehabilitate these individuals and get them back out into being tax-paying citizens? So, I mean, that's some of our goals. At the end of the day, we're just architects. We just design buildings. That's all we do. So, but obviously, we've done it enough times. We appreciate working with county clients, really trying to solve some needs and just get things done. So.
Well, we appreciate you guys greatly coming down, what you've done for us. Is there any other questions here from you?
I'd like to ask one. You keep talking about the pods and stuff. What's each one of those just cost? Like going from 100 bed to 120? So if you take, say, we end up with 105 beds, which gives you roughly 80 people that you have at his jail, what's the cost per pod?
We don't, I mean, that's kind of a hard decision. We usually price it just by a size. We can make accommodations based on any size, and that's going to drive that bed cost. Again, the hardest thing about projecting per bed is just you don't know what other support spaces are going in there. I mean, commissioners had mentioned the coroner's office and this, so I mean, it kind of skews some numbers a little bit. So again, that's where we start with this. I mean, I don't know if Dan has more definitive numbers, and we just get a little nervous going at a per bed price, right, just because, like I said, it's,
like you said, it's 90% to 10%. You figured 10% was for office space and stuff like that.
correct.
I just wondered if we just decided on a smaller facility.
And honestly, that's sometimes our challenge to our clients is, do you want us to design to a need, or do you want us to design to a budget? And sometimes that need and budget don't always match. and that's our job as architects, really. We kind of work with everybody. I mean, we work for the commissioners. We understand that. We want to design a facility that makes sense to the sheriff. It's operational, but we also have to hit a number. And
We've got to
So Ryan, quick question for you and your, the architects.
Comment to the end.
I'm sorry, but what's the footprint of these pods? So is it up, is it out? I mean, how much land extra does a pod take?
A pod. Another jail pod?
Whatever you're talking about pods.
This.
To house more people.
The pod that we talked about right here is just this pinwheel style, so,
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to get into too much detail for the sheriff, but I mean, we operate around a central control.
Okay.
What we found is this is the most efficient design to do for jails. Sometimes they're the old linear style where you have a corrections officer looking down a hallway. You cannot see into the rooms. There's just challenges associated with that. So this one allows one corrections officer right there in that central pod, in that central control, to look out and see everything. So it's an observation style.
Two-story.
Two-story.
It's two-story. Well, that's what I needed to know.
It's a
So
tier.
it's up.
Yeah, it's up.
Thank you.
So I got a question. So what we're looking at here is a low-end amount that Anton configured, probably came up with the higher amount. The issue is that, there's several $1 million that's going to be paid in interest between the two. There's a time frame that's going to be paid, 20 years or 40. So there's a cost. And so with what you were just saying, I've always been pretty proud of the EMS because we built that for about $1.9 million. That was before, that was 5 or 6 years ago, all right? But it looks nice. It's got offices, it's got, bedrooms for the employees. It's got an area, kitchen area.
Kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good thing. And it's more of a post-style metal building. Now, I understand with this, where the holding area, that's gotta, I mean, that's, when you talk about cutting costs, I would say it would be easier to take your administration down in cost than, the nuts and bolts of the jail where there's cells and things like that come at more of a fixed cost than a variable, right?
Correct.
Okay, so so as we try to figure out an amount tonight, or beyond tonight, whatever direction we go, I assume, is this building here made of brick? Or, I mean, when you look at the cost, what is presented for, say, the $25 million that you talked about? Is it what, I guess, you got certain per square foot costs that you're using, right? And so there's a north and then there's a low point. Are we gonna be able to get, I guess, some figures when we just, look at the cost? Because you're right, it's either this is gonna drive us or we're gonna drive this, and I prefer we drive this because we're the council, but he's a sheriff, he's got things he's gotta have, so. You understand where I'm going?
This particular design was just a pre-engineered metal building, so really there wasn't much,
There
there wasn't
okay.
any elaboration to the exterior
Okay,
whatsoever.
that's what
It was
I wanted to
really
know.
done as cost efficient as you can get. Now, we did do a little brickwork around the front, just for the entry, it is a public entrance, but then it's also a maintenance issue when you're mowing and things like that, just not have.
Okay,
um,
that's
the
what I
siding
wanted to
down
know, I
the
didn't know
front.
what, I guess this was, okay.
And that's what you remember, right?
So, just so people understand in these pods, what these cells are, they're called still cells, and that is the industry standard now. These are literally steel boxes. They're no longer bars like you used to see in old jails. These are steel boxes that are like coated with a truck bed liner with an epoxy, truck bed looking material, whatever I think of it as. The good thing about those, the way that those are designed, is all of the electric and all of the plumbing is on the back side of those cells on the outside, providing a chute, a maintenance chute that is, it's enormous. I mean, it's probably from here to there to get it work. And all of that stuff for maintenance is inside of that chute. So it's easy access so that your costs for any repairs go down. You're not having to, unlike now, if I have a problem with my plumbing in my jail, my floor has to be jackhammered up to get to the plumbing. You can imagine what that's like. These provide those to be easily maintenance. If there is something wrong, saves cost in the long run when you're talking about fixing something that gets broke. Inmates are going to flush blankets down toilets. They're going to, if they could flush their cellmate down the toilet, they probably would. But anything they get their hands on is going to go down that pipe. So these systems are designed to prevent further damage and to be easily remedied, which is some of the problems that we have now. Our stuff is not easy to remedy. So when there is a problem, it's a major problem. And Bill can tell you, they will flush anything. They will ruin the plumbing if they can. Just for the record, I had talked to, we are inspected every year by the Indiana Department of Corrections. So the guy that does the inspection, there's two guys that do the inspection, one does north, one does south. Obviously we're in the south. For people to understand the condition that our jail is in. Jeff is his name. Jeff sat in my office and he said, and I will quote him, "Ryan, you have the worst jail in the state of Indiana." That is the condition that our jail is in. He made some other statements. He was a prior police officer, so his lingo is a lot like cops. But that hits home. One, that sets us up for failure in many ways. Every single person in this room has insurance. whether you've got car insurance, health insurance, life insurance, some type of insurance policy. Every single person in here. You don't have that because you want it. That's not something that you get because you want. It's something so it prevents financial catastrophic failure in the event that something occurs and you need it. That is the same thing that this is doing. We are trying to prevent extreme financial failure, that if we was to be sued, something happened inside the jail where someone was injured, and we end up getting a lawsuit, we are going to go bankrupt. It will bankrupt our county. We can't afford to do that. I don't want to build a jail. The last thing I want to deal with is a jail. I don't care about my name going on some silly plate in a lobby. What I do care about is your tax money going to work the way it's supposed to go. And we are dumping so much money into a building that is literally sinking in the ground. We have 22 air handlers that need fixed, still need fixed, at $10,000 each. We've had 2 repaired already. The others are leaking all over the place. No inmates could take showers. We couldn't do dishes the other day, a couple weeks ago, because a pump had failed and they could run no water. We had no ability to run water. That means they can't shower, we can't wash dishes, we can't wash laundry. None of that could occur because our plumbing is failing. We are spending so much of that money that we're supposed to be saving for a new jail to fix one that we know is going to get a wrecking ball. That's costing you more money. That is not what we want to do. That is not being fiscally responsible. None of you are going to take your paycheck and go out to the dumpster and light it on fire. But that's what's happening now. We are wasting money that you guys are paying out of every single paycheck by dumping it into that building that is, quote unquote, the worst jail in the state of Indiana. I would rather do law enforcement stuff than deal with a jail. Trust me, there's lots of things regarding law enforcement that I would much rather focus my attention on. This is not.
Ryan,
yes.
to be fair, I don't think that there's any commissioner or council member that's saying don't build or don't figure this out. I mean, that's why we're here.
Yes.
Again.
Madam President.
I want to hold questions till the end.
Microphones being used, or, because those are just unaccommodated out here.
They're on.
Yeah, they're
Can you at
on,
least
they're
ask
every
them to
other.
bill, please?
Anything else for you gentlemen? Appreciate you greatly being here.
Thank you.
Dan, I'm going to bring you up now if you don't care. Dan Zerner with Garmon Construction Services. Has been with the county for long before I came into the picture, probably long before everybody up here, other than maybe Andy, I don't know. He was around back in the day.
Hey, I'm still a young.
I know you're a young guy, but
Nick,
Tom, that's right. So there was a few that's going back a ways, but anyway, Dan's been through a lot with us here. Very knowledgeable, has built many jails in the state of Indiana. And Dan, I'd just like for you to touch base on the numbers that we're talking about, whether it be 20 million, what does that really cost us? Or if it's 26 million, what does that really cost us? Because it's not just 20 million.
You always give me the fun stuff.
I do. It's because you're so smart and I depend on you.
You're welcome.
One of the things I want to thank Ryan and the Elevatus team and everybody that's put into this second time around. One little clarification I'd like to make. Ryan picked up on, but didn't pick up on quite what I said. When we're talking about the difference, and Andy, you brought it up, the difference between admin area and the jail area, it's not 90-10 or 85-10 on the whole thing. I said that if we were looking at a certain square footage amount, about 80% of that is the hard pod and about 20% of that is the soft area. And just to elaborate on what they were saying, be sure everybody understands, Ryan did a good job of explaining how these steel cells all come in modular, and they come complete. They come with everything in them but the mattress pad. They're all done. You just plug and play. But they sit inside of a superstructure that's generally a pre-engineered metal building. So you don't build that real expensive core around the outside. So that's how we get to this point. So based upon the things that were said here tonight, I want to share with everybody that my information is pretty current. We just finished the Sullivan County Jail. You all, some of you all were up at Brazil. We saw what we're doing in Brazil for their jail. Right now, we have 3 more county jails in construction in various places in the county, or various places in the state. So I came tonight with really what I think are accurate numbers. I also want to share that I'm currently running for the Hendricks County Commissioners, a new coroner's office. And I just finished a coroner's office in White County. So I pretty much know what's involved with those. And I want to mention, for example, that in this module, and I haven't seen the plan, I was just told square footage, but you got to keep in mind, if we're really going to build a coroner's office, you need a cooler. Most of the time in the coroner's office and the sheriff's office, you want backup generation, which we haven't considered. So when you start talking about building a jail, I took 30,000 square feet at the cost that I see right now on 5 different projects for a jail. And you're looking at a cost of the jail construction only. That doesn't include engineering, architecture, CM fees, other professional fees, at about $22,500,000. But then you add all those fees for engineers, architects, financial advisors, those other things, you're going to add another 10%. That's $2,250,000. In my view, you're going to add 20% at least if you're talking about a coroner's office and EMA and a kitchen and all the equipment and everything you need to service and fill this building. In other words, in addition to the jail itself, you got to have equipment and kitchen equipment, and you got to have medical equipment for the medical staff. If you're building a coroner's office, you'll have a cooler. You're probably going to have a generator. So I'm adding 20% for that. That's $4,500,000.
Then I'm gonna add, we do have a brand-new cooler for the coroner's office that was purchased in 2020,
So we can move that.
we can move that.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I will tell you.
Not a big number, but
I
we
will
do
tell you
have
that
one.
Sullivan County, without any of those other items, was 13% over the construction of the cost. So I'm within relative numbers. None of that includes the cost of real estate. So without real estate, my number, just throwing a dart right now, my number is $29,250,000 for a 30,000 square foot jail like shown. The other thing we didn't factor in that is in this thought process that I have is the jail they built in Lincoln, Missouri, the jail up at Carroll County, the Sullivan County Jail, those were all predominantly budgeted 2 years ago. There's been 1.5% construction interest per month for 2 years. So I have that in my number. But if we get close to building this jail to where we could bid it somewhere around the 1st of 2025, I think you're between 29 million and 29.5. That's the best I can do throwing the dart. It might be 28,500, but it's not 20 million, it's not 25 million, it's not 26 million. You're somewhere between 28 and 29.5 million. That's the best I can tell you.
And Dan, I'm not gonna hold you to the exact number, but how many jails have you been involved in this state in the last 5 years?
There have been 32 jails built in Indiana in the last 7 years. We built 24 of them. We're also doing the $1.2 billion, with Elevatus, by the way, the $1.2 billion new prison for the state of Indiana at Westville. That's our project. And we just opened a division in Georgia solely to build jails. There's 19 jails down there, and we have our first jail contract down there for $165 million.
So you're pretty experienced at what you do.
I'll take any other questions from anybody. I'm sorry my news isn't light and easy.
Anyone? Holly?
So do we know, I mean, if we took the coroner and the EMA, so is that included in that design then?
That one right there is what we had planned on. Like Ryan said, it's just a matter of fact of moving some walls.
Basically, the coroner and EMA, with the exception of a cooler and a little lab room for the coroner.
Their offices.
Their offices.
Yeah. And so what we had talked about, Polly, and I don't know if Ryan had discussed it with you, I know you guys have had some discussions, but where the Sally Port's at, is where the coroner's office and cooler area would be,
Right.
as you pull in.
The bottom side.
But again, it's just an office.
They would need their own HVAC, obviously, in case the cooler was ever to go down. you don't want to contaminate the rest of the facility with what comes from cooler going down.
Well, not only the cooler, Ryan, but the lab area, that has to be negative pressure, so none of that influences the rest of the building.
And again, those were just thought processes as if we're going to build a structure, it would be a time to do something like that for the future of our kids, grandkids, and saving the county excess dollars that we're spending on facilities right now, and the one facility is in horrible shape.
So basically, without real estate, the numbers to the left here that we're looking at, $29,250,000, that doesn't fit. Any of what's Anton and Polly's options that's been proposed. And that's, I think Polly's was taking 26 million out the max length. So we just, we're gonna have to discuss options.
So we need to regroup, and that's why we're here tonight, right? We needed a number. Council feels, Anton and Holly feel that they've got the numbers as close, and I'm sure they've discussed them with the rest of you. I agree with you, Andy. We're outside our
And I'll be
realm.
honest with you, and I spoke via email briefly with Polly today. You know, a 40-year loan to be midway and then up and say, okay, kids, you know, I mean, it'd be like me at 80 years old taking out a 40-year loan. They can't discriminate against my age, so I could do that, and then leave my kids with an amortization out like this. There will be no tax in 18 years, so something, if we went 40 years, is going to have to happen there. I'm not a fan of doing that to future generations.
And
don't think
I
anybody-
want to reiterate that as well, because I'm not a fan of bringing it out 40 years
Sure.
either.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to paint
That
you
was
there.
just
I'm just saying
for-
it's an option.
Right,
And it's about an $8 million additional cost to the taxpayer, stretching it out that other 20.
for the
interest costs are-
interest.
Yeah, for the interest.
I figured 11 million.
Yeah, I calculated around 8 million. And again, can you hold up till the end? We're gonna have public comment, I promise.
And nobody wants to, saddle our children and our grandchildren with this.
So,
Hold on a second. I also think we don't want to saddle them with having to build another jail in 30 years.
Right.
absolutely.
That's the big thing, what Ryan was talking about earlier. We either do this right or we don't. do it.
Right, I agree. And that's why, this being a 70-year facility, that,
Well, and let me just say this about that. December 14th, the council took a vote, and that vote was, we will work within our budget and we will not raise taxes.
right, exactly.
and that's what I spoke here this evening. Nobody was raising taxes. So, we do have one other option. It's been presented probably for a month, I'm gonna guess. I think about everybody here at the table has seen it. Anton and I spoke of this a couple of months ago. Polly and I have spoke also. We have been contacted by the Monroe County Commissioners. They are in the process of doing a feasibility study and building a new jail. They have asked if we are interested in doing a regional jail, or at least into discussion with them. That is an option. We have that paper here in front of us. We can either say, yeah, we're interested in having a conversation, or no, we're not. Sheriff White has already signed that he's not interested, as we were working on a jail project. Myself and President of Council Polly, we have not signed this yet. And I think that maybe we need to look at an option, at least have a conversation. I think that's where our county's at. Do I want a joint venture with another county? Probably not. But we don't have $29 million either. Anton, you and I had a conversation about this. You want to jump in? You want to add anything?
Yeah, I think simply put, the thought is, again, very abstract, but if Monroe County is building, and they no doubt have to, then could there be some kind of long-term arrangement or agreement, collaboration, for us to get out of the jail business, not build a jail, but pay so much per year, obviously based on population and numbers and things like that, to them, which they could use for their facility and so on. I think we should explore that, just to do our diligence. I mean, at the end of the day, it may not be feasible, but there's no harm in having a conversation, particularly with the timing on their end, I think is critical.
Absolutely.
And again, very simple math, but, right now, we're talking about 1.3 million, 1.4, whatever dollars we're talking about putting out per year to basically pay for building a jail. That doesn't count operations. Wouldn't it be nice if we were paying 1.2 million a year in a 20-year agreement with Monroe County? We'd be money ahead, and we wouldn't have to be operating a jail facility. We would probably still need a smaller, housing type facility, and we'll need jail transport and some other support-related things, but we wouldn't have a full staff, cost of operations jail, because we'd be paying for that per year to another county. So just a thought, and I would be in favor of that myself.
And signing this would not say that we are definitely going to do this.
Doesn't
It just
obligate us to
means
anything.
we would be exploring it, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Ryan, I'm going to have you jump back in here, because we've talked about this. There's still some operation cost. There's transportation. I don't want any wool pulled over anybody's eyes. By doing something like this, and again, this is exploratory for us as council and commissioners, but there is an expense on the other side of that for a holding facility, transportation, and I'm going to let you elaborate because that's your field, not ours.
So, and I will let Bill jump in too, because this is definitely his lane of travel. But if you take in 45 to 60 inmates on average, you got to pay other jails $37.50 per inmate. That is the rate. So you're looking at $616,000 to $812,000 a year. That's just for the housing aspect. That does not include any transportation, does not include needing a holding facility of some sort to until they can be transported. Obviously, every time somebody has to go to court, we're going to have to go to Monroe County to get them to bring them back. If Bill is a lot more versed on how the transports work and stuff, so if Bill, if you could chime in. I don't know what the officers, how many officers it would take. It would still take corrections officers to do those transports, because simply put, we don't have the manpower on the road to tell our guys, hey, you're going to Monroe County to book people. That's going to leave either one or no officers inside our county. That's not an option. We can't do that. We cannot go without coverage, and we certainly can't go safely with only one officer working and somebody else is gone. That puts our officers at risk.
How many jailers do you currently have?
9.
And, I think one thing that, kind of thought about is, you made the point that earlier that if in a jail, if an inmate sues and he's got a case, that it could bankrupt the county. Clearly, that responsibility would be on the regional facility at that point. So that's
I'll go back to statistics when it comes to the transports. Right now, we transport a few blocks away, right? They're in very close range to the courthouse when we have to bring somebody here. The #1 cause of death in the United States between ages of 5 and 32 years of age is a vehicle crash. You are just as liable if that vehicle's in a crash transporting an inmate to and from Monroe County. and we know how many crashes we were. The other thing that it does is, you know, our department relies heavily on our commissary funds that we receive from inmates buying things within the jail. We go to trainings, we've purchased vehicles, we got a piece of equipment the other day to help find missing people. All of that comes out of that fund. That would completely eliminate that fund and put it back on the council, and we're coming here asking for those items. So that's a thing to consider.
Well, I think, Ryan, the logistics itself would be a nightmare. When you say common ground with Monroe County, and it's worth a discussion. Where do you build this common that it suits both counties? Do they pick where they build it, and do we just go to it? Do we get to all decide where it's at logistically? And
They pick it.
well, then that's unreasonable in my mind, and I'll just say it. It might be a viable financial solution, but that's not the solution when you're leaving the county to transport inmates, and we're leaving our county sitting by itself. It's not reasonable. I'm just going to say it. I don't think that that's the option that we. I would like to be involved in the discussion, but we can't do that.
I'm not saying that there shouldn't be discussion. I think every avenue needs to be looked at.
Absolutely, and I agree. But
Without any stone being unturned. Everything needs to be looked at. I'm looking at logistics. We still will have to have corrections officers to do those transports. So we'll still be paying those salaries. We're not going to be able to get away from that. Again, because we cannot take officers off the road to send them to do a booking. And if anyone in this room has ever booked people into Monroe County, I have many times when I was with ISP. It is not a fast process. You were there a long time. It's a different system over there. It's not like it is here. Here, it is easy. I come in Sallyport, I drop somebody off, the corrections officer takes them from me, I sign a form real quick, and I walk away. That is not Monroe County. They are going to be stuck there for a while. You can bet for at least an hour just trying to book your inmate in. And that's not including the drive to and from. Vehicle maintenance, vehicle wear and tear, those are things that have to be considered.
And they would, I mean, there's been no discussion. But there again, there is for this fee, per se, I mean, when you figure up food, electricity, water, you know, plus what we're paying for a new jail. I mean, I think that's the reason everybody's kind of saying, you know, at least we consider this because, you know, we, again, took a vote on what we're going to spend. It's not jiving with the numbers. And so we've got to solve this problem. And I will tell you, I don't think there's anything here that's going to make everyone in the world happy. But, you know, you said it first, and I cut you off and said, hey, this problem is going to get solved. That's why everybody's here tonight. We're not going to leave you hanging anymore. And so the bottom line is, one way or the other, it's got to get solved.
No, and I think, you know, whatever discussions we have with Monroe County, are they taking care of the medical aspect? Or do we still have to cover medical for those inmates? You know, the $37.50, does that include all the food?
Yeah, it's
Do
unexplored territory.
they do any transports?
Right.
You know, those are questions I would want to ask them. Do they do any transports, or is it solely up to us to do all the transports? Do they come and get inmates, or is that something that we're going to have to do those transports to Monroe County? Those are questions that if you guys have those conversations with Monroe County, those are questions that need to be answered. You know, I know that there is only one county in the state of Indiana that does not have a jail. Just one. I think it's Ohio, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right.
Is it Ohio? Yeah, Ohio County. They're the only one that does not. You know, they may be a resource to reach out and say, why do you not? What are you experiencing by not having one? And How does it work for you and how does it not work for you? What are the challenges that you have because you don't have them? You know, those are questions that I think that the council and the commissioners need to ask if they're looking at that avenue. And if that means that I don't have to build one, that's awesome. I don't want to spend my time on the construction site.
Well, and I think everyone here agrees that we need to explore it, at least to have a conversation. We have no idea where it's gonna go if we don't have that conversation. We owe that to the taxpayers of the county. That may be 30 days down the road, I don't know. We'll have to put something together here.
Right, and I can get with Sheriff Marte.
And we'll want you to be part of this conversation as well. You're gonna have
Definitely.
questions that we can't ask or answer, so.
Plus, we don't know truly where they sit with it. By law, they have to explore this option.
Right.
They might just be doing some paperwork and they don't
Yeah.
really.
Exactly.
Are really interested
Right,
themselves,
right.
We did the
right?
same thing here.
Yeah.
We did a feasibility study 2 years ago. We sent the same letter out to all the counties around.
Right, it's just
Nobody-
obeying the law. They have to
Exactly.
send the letter.
But in our situation and our financial restraints, if we don't entertain this or at least have a conversation, we're not doing our job. I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. Is everybody in?
So
agreement
can
here?
we, since this is a special meeting and we can take action, and Nicole, did you get your question answered? Because I know you were concerned about.
That's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we do sign off on the letter that Monroe County had sent us to at least open up the dialogue for a regional jail application.
And I'll second that, Anton. Any other discussions or, I'm sorry, Paul.
no.
If not, I'm going to take a vote. All in favor to sign, Polly and I to sign this letter? Aye?
Is this a public meeting?
It is. 10? We've got 10 here, we've got 9, what do we got? All in favor? Aye. Yeah, everybody. You guys counted out, Nicole? Thank you.
You need to know. You can't not know.
Right, I
Right.
mean, we wouldn't be responsible with the taxpayers' money if we didn't at least explore this.
Polly, I have the one that Sheila gave me that Ryan's already
Okay.
signed, so if you and I both sign it, we'll give it to Nicole and we'll get it forwarded over to Monroe County.
And before we leave this up, I know we've got Dan, Elevatus, our TAWs here. Is it, I mean, are we walking away saying that this design, 29 million or bust? You know,
Did I not hear figures of 21 and 22 earlier?
But then you add all the cost of constructing over there.
If I may just reiterate again, I wanted to just clarify too, as architects, we design anything, and I mean anything. So the fact that this is where we sat down with the sheriff and actually discussed what the ideal layout would be, that's where Dan, respectfully, the Garmon team is pulling their numbers from. If you guys sit down and tell us $26 million, well, guess what? We're gonna come up with 100 beds, 105. I mean, I don't know the number, but it's like, here's what you might get for that number. So I want to be very clear that we can
Right.
design and redesign things to match the number. That's not the concern. It's just,
let me just say this, sir. We have a $20 million option financially. We've got up to a $26 million option financially. And
All in, all in.
All in. So, that's, help us help you if you can, because that's, I guess, the parameters.
I don't doubt that we can design to that number. Now, my biggest fear is do we put the sheriff at odds with being able to house the appropriate level of inmates that you guys have. And then we're cutting programs and we're cutting all these other support space. I mean, that's where we sit down with everybody and really work through what are the necessities, what are the priorities of this design project that need to happen.
Well,
So,
I guess,
I'm
and I'm not
I'm
putting you
skirting
in the
your-
hot seat,
skirting
but I'm
your-
also saying, help us help you in that, we've got other options too, we've got to explore.
Yeah.
So it's either gonna work or it's not, and we need the best option
Yeah.
for the.
There's various levels of design that can happen. I mean, obviously from here, you design anything from single cell, two-man cells, four-man cells, and box. I mean, you can go any levels of classifications to get that number of inmates. It only makes the sheriff's job just a little bit harder, and he'll figure it out.
I think all of us,
He has now.
we care about the pod system, that part we want to maintain.
Yeah.
It's the administrative things that are in there, what can we cut out of there? What fat's in there that we don't need?
That would be where we want to sit down.
And I think that we need to do that, or you folks need to do that with Ryan, come back with another plan. We need to see something that maxes us out at the 26
And to be fair,
million.
I think Dan said, hey, but when you look at doing that, only 20% of the project is administrative versus 80 being
Right.
holding, correct, Dan?
I know this is gonna get published in the newspaper, and I'm gonna regret it, so I'm not forcing you to try it. But it looks to me like if you drop to 100 deaths, just to give you some idea, you're probably at 25 million, 24 million, 25 million instead of 30. So, you know, it just depends on where you go with this.
That cuts us by 20 beds.
Right. We went to 125, but we were talking earlier, the max we've ever had is 90, we needed 20% cushion. Does that fall in that 100 bed, we're averaging 45 and getting to
If
60?
we had 100 beds, so that would be, our 80% would be 80. That
We're
would.
getting closer in that thing if we can get into that.
Absolutely. You know, if, I think we're around, what's the maximum capacity right now?
72 total, that's what every bed full.
72 in every bed.
That's not general population, that's every bed full, 72.
So to go to Chris's point a minute ago, what Chris is telling you is, if you say, all right, 100 beds, we can get in there in a 25 neighborhood, they can design that. We just have to figure out what's going to come out. Now, what we really had thought of that was how we incorporate EMA.
And it looks like we're gonna be taking those things out.
Yeah, those things are probably
Yeah,
going to come out
sure.
to get into this project. But the answer is, we can get in there. I just don't see any way for $20 million, as much as I'd love you to have it, I don't see any way for $20 million I can get you where it can meet the state of Indiana requirements that they open with classification. I think you're going to have to be at 100 beds. And 100 beds, every jail we're building right now is over that cost. I mean, I think it's going to be 25 million at least. But I think you can get 24, 25, 25 and a half. But it's going to take some work. If that's the budget limit, Elevada's can design that.
I think that's what we're saying, right, Andy? 25 million's our top.
It is, but there again, I'm not comfortable with that because I don't want to extend it, again, hand it off to the kids. So we need to work both angles to come up with a solution.
So let's do that. We'll explore the Monroe County issue.
So another thing is, several years ago, we had an actual working jail committee. And I do think, especially now, if you're going to get into the meat of this, and we're going to be talking about space, and we're going to be talking about the number of beds and the layout on a property, I think that you need to have a working committee that meets regularly with key stakeholders, so they're constantly talking, reviewing, and tweaking, and reporting back. I would hate to see, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't see any productive movement forward if we're just going to now assume the sheriff's going to do some things, and we're going to ask Elevadas to do some adjustments, and then we're going to re-meet in a joint session 3 months from now. I don't see that as being successful.
I agree.
So I think that there needs to be a committee where you have at least one from each board, the
Right.
sheriff. You need to have some of these people meet regularly and dig into this.
And then they can come and report back, and then that way we are
Knowing the
on
limits.
point, yeah.
Knowing the limits
Right.
that we've set, so that's just my opinion.
No, I agree, and we can try to establish that board tonight before we leave.
I think that's an excellent idea.
We need at least 5 people, I would say, on that. We don't want to get out of control with it. But I agree, we get, you can do 2 from the council, 1 from the commissioners, keeps us out of meeting issues. The sheriff, Ryan, do you have any recommendations on someone that you would like to see on this committee?
I would like to see Bill Snodgrass on it.
Okay.
He's my jail commander. He has a lot more knowledge on this than anybody else on my department. And I think his opinion is important.
Well, that would put us at 5. I'd be more than happy to sit on that committee. I'll let Polly decide, unless Joel wants to do that.
Whatever.
I would like to be on it as well.
You got the sheriff, Bill, Polly, me or you?
Yeah, I'm good.
You're good, okay. Then we need
Do we
one
want
more from the
another?
council.
Anton, do you?
No.
Okay.
Steve?
On enough committees.
Steve, okay, great.
I would, but we just got new committees for JRAC this evening, and I'm on 2, so it takes a lot of time.
Okay, so we've got 5. Steve, Joel, Polly, Bill, and Ryan. I don't know who wants to head that up as far as organization. Polly, that'll probably fall on you. I guess we could put it on Ryan.
With this, with the regional jail thing, is that something that we could possibly see if they would be interested in coming to a joint meeting and presenting kind of the?
I think the way that this reads, Andy, that they're asking us to have a conversation with
Right.
them over there. So, yeah, I don't know why that we couldn't as a group, but council's here. Dana, is that something that's possible that we can all go as a group to Monroe County and have this discussion, or is that something that can't be done?
Well, it can be done, it would be part of the open door law,
Okay.
so, but it can be done.
With all due respect, having been through this a few times,
Uh-huh.
they're going to want to have that meeting pretty intimate, the first one.
Well, and I figured that.
So I think your jail committee would go over meet with them.
There you go. Yes, I'm sorry.
And then Sheriff White, on that letter, since the discussion we've had versus the time that you originally signed the letter, I think if you would reconsider maybe going interested on it, just in a spirit of uniformity. Okay.
I think that we are foolish if we don't, like I just said a minute ago. I think every stone needs unturned. The way that it read originally, the way that I perceived it is differently than.
You already marked it.
But I think that, I think we have to. I mean, I think that it's.
Well, it looks like Commissioner Burton already made the decision here, so he circled
He agreed,
interested
so I'm
instead,
gonna
yes.
change it to interested instead of.
I just hate for Monroe County to get the letter, and then they're gonna wonder why the sheriff disagreed, and then the council and commissioner did, so. Okay.
We need to look into.
Thank you.
I think, you know, don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but as we look at this potentially, you know, hands down, even if we went this route, there would still need to be enough money from what we would be inputting into this to build Ryan the operations center that he needs.
Okay, so we've dealt with the, I'm sorry, Jim.
We would have infrastructure, Andy, that we would still be responsible for, coroner's facility and an appropriate EMA facility. So, good point. I mean, it all comes at a cost in some form or fashion.
And I have a question here, like, okay, if it's a 1.2 million cost per year, and right now we're talking about taking the increased lit tax and covering a jail payment, once that lit tax is gone, then what do we pay for the inmates with? So,
It's another 20-year problem.
Plus the other thing is under the current jail lit ordinance, and under the law, we adopted the ordinance,
right,
operations can only be 20%.
Exactly.
You'd have to reauthorize it under the new law, which allows 100% to be used for operations. So if you decide, and again, full disclosure, if you decide to do operations and partner, you're going to have to update the ordinance
Right.
to allow use for that purpose.
My theory is there's a chance that in 18 years, the world will become much more ethical on this place.
I like that idea better.
Welcome to jail, right? Okay, we've got over that hump with the financial. I want to touch base on the posters on the wall here, so everybody's kind of up to date. We've talked about the property that the county bought several years back, which is the middle photo here with the pink all over it. That is 2%. Susan, you want to help me out here? I'm not the floodplain expert.
It's the 0.2% of floodplain. So the green is the flood fringe, and then the pink is the possibility that it could flood. Now, they are changing these layers soon. Hopefully, FEMA is looking at adding 2 feet high to everything, but that means that you're going to spread farther out. So the green may come in play at some time, at some point in that, the pink areas. So this is the jail, there's the storage units, there's the old EMS,
So this is FEMA that's talked. Susan is our flood control person going through classes. FEMA's telling the county of Spencer, the town of Spencer, however you want to look at it, that they're going to raise the floodplain by 2 feet. As we all know, if that happens, that just spreads out farther and farther, taking over more area. The one on the far right, or my right, is the Rawstone property. As you see, about half of that is already in the fringe. So if that comes up an additional 2 feet, that'll basically consume that property. The one on the end down here is the Verl Keith property that has been discussed. There is no flood issues with that property whatsoever, but it does have a price. Over on the far wall over here, you see there by Dan, that is the quarry property that's owned by Brett Franklin and O'Neill. Spoke to him last week 2 or 3 different times, met with him today. That property is available. He said he'd throw his name in the hat to sell that to the county. Of course, we haven't discussed any price. 5 to 10 acres of that. Speaking with the commissioners, we have property out on 43 and Franklin Road, 107 acres, and we made the offer. Of course, it's just an offer. There's nothing in stone. I don't want anybody to leave in here and say we did this, because we did not. Offered him 107 acres for the full 30 acres there because it has infrastructure. And that's a pretty fair trade.
But I just want to say that last September, when we started this jail meeting, we had one map on the wall, and I want to say to the commissioners, I appreciate your work in working and looking at different options, because I'm excited to hear more about.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Andy. And trust me, folks, I have worked tirelessly on this, and this is what we're down to. I've exhausted every piece of property.
I think everybody should really take a serious look at that. Again, it's just all discussion right now. We have infrastructure right there, Walmart's right there, folks.
Right, it already has the sewer, already has water.
And it would offer up a place for the sheriff to have training back into the quarry and things of that nature. This is a really viable resource.
So whenever you were pointing at these, you said that one's got a price. Now, the old Rawstone, does it have?
We didn't even price it because it's going to be so consumed in the floodplain. We didn't look at it.
All right, now, so I'm back, because clearly I've always had an interest in the current location. The current location is what we bought the storage units for. And what exactly, I mean, we obviously built there before, we obviously have an existing facility there. What does this mean?
There's some grandfathering issues that come in when you're dealing with flood. What's there was there. If we tear that stuff down, it changes what we can put back. Where's my insurance guy, John Farley? John, we're talking about that piece of property where the current jail is, the flood issues. I know right now you're showing on your side that it's right there across the street, but with the 2-foot elevation that's coming according to FEMA, and all I've got is that information. I can't prove that. Susan's the one that's dealing with that and going to classes and so on and so forth. It changes what we can do there. Cost of insurance changes what we can do there.
Yeah, so if anything that you see is green comes into a flood zone, you can buy insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program. I believe they capped that at $500,000. I have to verify that, but currently we have $2.5 million worth of flood coverage on our policy with a $100,000 deductible. And if we would go into, if that would go green, might's a stretch word, right? So we would have to go to the outside market if we needed to buy more insurance. The question that I don't know is what would be required from a lending perspective. What will they, if you did $25 million jail, will they require 5, 10? I don't know the answer to that. We're seeing the majority of our projects, we're seeing from the banking perspective on flood on commercial projects, lending that at $5 million. We just placed a $5 million policy last week. It was 15 grand.
So John, with that, if it does go green and we've already broke ground or whatever, is there a grandfathering?
The insurance is a year-to-year contract, so it would just depend on the flood maps. So I can't speak to, I don't want grandfathering and insurance to change or to intertwine at all. But from an insurance perspective, the insurance company could or couldn't come back and say, we will or we won't provide limits of this or raise deductibles.
Is there anything to do with, as an insurance guy, with architectural design to mitigate some of that? So
they lean very heavily upon the maps, what the maps say, what the zone is. I mean, there are some actuarial work around that, but it's, I would say, very difficult. Coastal property may be a little bit different than that, but
It's possible we may not even be able to get state permit.
And that's a concern, and that's what we've talked about. DNR will have a big say in what we can do there. Again, what's there is there, but if we go in there and start tearing things down, we may not be able to build back.
But I will say, there's green, like
It's right at
50
the
yards
road.
right there, so in essence, with that property, it could change.
Yeah, all of them could,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I don't remember the total as well. I do have elevation on that property. And, but we built the EMS too. My guess is 2 foot would take all of that. It sits in a hole.
And I think Susan kind of made that comment as well. Again, I'm not a floodplain expert. I rely on people that we have here working in the county to give us that information. John?
And two, if you think about being up on 231 or on 46, and you're looking down on that, right? As you go
Yes.
around it. And the elevation's about the same as it is on the other side. It's just kind of protected by those roadways. So I'm 90% sure if it comes up 2 foot, then almost all that's going to go to floodplain. It's almost a backflow.
I think in 2008, that all retained water for quite some time in the 2008 flood.
Which is interesting because I think one of the proposals was that looked at the possibility of building somewhere else and liquidating this site, but that also limits
Anybody
what
else?
that's worth.
Yep. You're right. You're exactly right. And we've thought about that. We're stuck with what we've got there, unfortunately. Now, it has been said that a lot of people are interested in buying storage units. They're already there, they're already existent, so they can buy those units as they are. It would be up to them to pay any additional flood insurance, so on and so forth, but it would be an investment property for someone. So that is a possibility.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of financing, I would hope, let's say we did do a property trade, we don't need this anymore, that as soon as that's liquidated, the dollars go to paying down the loan.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, oh.
Yeah.
And that would save huge amount of interest as well.
excellent.
So
Yeah,
there
it
is
would
a
be
possibility on the
excellent
back
possibility.
end with that option.
There's a lot of moving parts here, obviously.
And the main one is the fact that there's no room in the gap for real estate right now.
That's why that piece over there with the trade is our best bet. For anybody here that's interested, we did a feasibility study to run sewer down 43, which is just south of Hoosier Energy, about Owen Camp, which they're building the subdivision. From there down to Franklin Road was $9 million. That was with 2 pump stations and the sewer. So that makes that piece of property over there very valuable to us. No other questions from here. I'm going to open it to the public. We're going to take 3-minute comments. Anybody like to start? Anybody have a comment? Lady in the middle there, I'm sorry, I can't really see you.
Hello. When you talk about the EMS or the EMA, is that the new ambulance building?
No, EMS is different than EMA, Emergency Management, is Jack White. His office is over here off of the square.
Okay, so that wouldn't be bothered? the
That would not be.
construction? Okay.
Yeah.
And my other question was, when you said all in, and you said there still has to be property purchased somewhere, I didn't know if that was all in that, or but then you explained that there's a trade going, that sounds.
You talking about all in as in the coroner's office and the EMA?
No,
Okay.
all in money.
The 26 now.
It's not including the land.
Not including the land unless we can do an even swap for this
Okay,
one right here.
and that's what I was gonna ask. If it's all in, then that means that the land still has to be purchased.
That is still part of the puzzle.
From taxpayers' money.
It would be part of we would reduce the cost of the jail and pay for the property out of these $25 million that we're talking
So
about.
the jail just keeps getting smaller and
Yep.
smaller.
Yep.
That is correct.
That's all.
Anyone else? I'm sorry, what was your name, hon?
Debbie Parks.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for,
A shovel of dirt tomorrow, how long does it take to build this thing?
18 months.
Year and a half?
yeah, we've been told 18 months to 24 months. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's why you have that cost increase due to inflation. Anyone else? Tom?
Tom April, I appreciate y'all. This is much better than the first one in September. Appreciate, like Councilman Wood said, got more options on the board. And I commented to you, President, that, after that meeting, I don't like spending money for this, but I realize we have to do something. And I appreciate the effort to try to control these costs. I really do. I appreciate Bob's comment on less beds, because I did figures. I was sitting there doing figures before you even said it. 20 beds is a roughly 17% drop, $4 million from 23 million. I just went through. We can get it even a little further down, because I've heard consistently the mid-50s, like this occasional 80, but that seemed very rare. Heard that in the first work session, that couldn't go back. There's no video, and there were no minutes for that. So I couldn't verify that, but my memory hasn't told me. Just a little. I would argue something with something you said twice in this meeting.
Okay.
And you started off with, we're not raising taxes. Then I heard the extension of the tax for 3 more years beyond. You are effectively raising the tax if you do that. I hope you realize that.
Extended.
you are costing taxpayers more money. You're not raising the percentage but you are costing them 3 more years of that tax.
Yeah,
So-
I'm not, because
Yeah.
commissioners don't
Right,
control
right, right.
tax.
No, I'm saying
Right.
in general.
The state is the one that's saying, hey, we can
Yeah.
give you 2 more
So you need
years.
to be careful,
Right.
because you are effectively will be raising a tax.
So let me ask you this, sir. If that is the case, then, I mean, clearly, again, with the amount of money that we've dedicated to this, and whenever the tax sunsets, there's going to be, so that's why I think it's important to look at all the options. And wouldn't you, I mean.
Oh, I do too. I think in Monroe County, I'm like most of them in this room, going to bed in Monroe County is like the last thing I want to do. No, let's be honest, people. But we have to look at it. We have to look at it. I appreciate you doing that. Appreciate the sheriff willing to be more open to that possibility. Because I understand that's a little bit of a control. I mean, face it, you're going to have to give up control. And that's something none of us want to do. I mean,
Correct.
we're human beings. So, again, keep plugging out. I'm glad you got a committee. That's awesome. But, continue to give feedback to the public, because that's the best way, and hopefully people watch this that aren't here, and they'll see the efforts that have already been made.
Appreciate it, Tom. Barry?
It's my opinion, and a couple others that I talked to, we've looked at these plans before, and they're really great. I don't know, and prices, in my opinion, is okay too. But the problem that I have is the fact that the jail is supposed to be someplace to put people and rehabilitate them. But if you go with the EMF office and the coroner's office, and you put a sheriff's office, and you got, all these other different tables and things and like that, it just seems like it just keeps adding on to it. And it just seems like if you're gonna have a jail, can't it just be a jail? Does it have to be everything else? And that's my point, because if we want to have a really nice place for the sheriff and his officers and stuff, use another building or build something for them, okay? But the idea of having a jail with like everything inside of it, I just don't, I think it's just too expensive for us. For a small county, we can't afford that.
Well, I think that's why we discussed, Sam, I'll get to you in just a second. That's why we discussed removing the EMA office in the corners to cut the price, keep the cost down. We also want to put the sheriff and his officers in that same facility. They do not have that right now. Go ahead, Sam. Well, everybody knows who I am. I'm the best fortune and unfortunate. Back in 2021, we had it laid out, we had all the design and everything done. It's right here, everybody's saying it, Gary's saying it. It's all done. It was 21 million, between 18 and 21 million dollars. The same thing is going on right there. Now, I'm going to support Sheriff White on this. I'm a two-term sheriff, been there and done that, got the coffee cut and hat and one of his ink pens. Thank you, sir. I understand what he needs, and when this particular thing came up, I'm impressed with this idea here. But when Andy said $25 million, if we can build a jail for $25 million, that will do the things that Sheriff White needs and have the room and stuff like that, I'm all for that, because this right here, now, I do have a little, I always got a burr on my side, it seems like, because I'm real concerned how come RQAW wasn't talked to about this. You went with Elevatus, we spent $100-some thousand with RQAW, we spent $200,000 with Garmon, give or take, I don't know the exact numbers, so I'm a little concerned as to why RQAW wasn't contacted about this, but nevertheless, commissioners have a right. And Sam, none of that money was wasted. All of that feasibility study moves over to the new project. So, want to make that clear to everyone. If we can get a jail built, this one was between 18.5 and 21.7. This is in 2021. It's all been designed, all been laid out, similar to that Ryan has there. So if you can build a jail for $25 million and have a property mixed in with that, the commissioners and council and work group can work it out, so you go from here done.
So with what he's saying, have we, and are we, since we are Catholic Society here, are we gonna elicit some competition to see who can build this thing?
Oh, when it comes to the bid process, absolutely. Yeah.
If I can, sir, real quick, so agreeing with what.
He's taller than I am.
You're next.
Just to really quick clarify, so the average cost of construction has gone up 6% every year. With the exception of 2022, it went up 14%. So in those 3 years, that's $3,700. So I think, Sam, the reason that there's a little bit of a price difference in that one for today's price is because of those construction cost inflation that's happened over the last 3 years.
You'd have to add 25% to this number.
Oh, absolutely.
Sorry, sir.
That's okay, Ryan. Vincent Myers. Commissioner Burton, so you have talked about an overall cost to the project. Let's say it's $26 million. This gentleman right here says, I can build you a jail for $26 million. In reference to Andy, we should probably be telling him what we need and then have him bid on that.
That's what the committee's gonna do.
Because I gotta be perfectly honest with you, if you go to a car dealership, you say, I have $30,000 to spend, they're gonna charge you $30,000.
Conversation. Yeah,
Right?
we've already had that conversation.
I'm sure you have, but in reference to the conversation that was done earlier, he said, I can build you a jail for 26 or 28 or 30, whatever it is. At the end of the day, Sheriff White and your committee needs to come up with what we need and then let those contracts.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly what'll happen.
Thank you.
If I may also, what I would like to see happen is, we look at the number of beds, we see if they can produce a pod system that is, that fits our needs for the number of beds we need. And then, if we just say how many offices we need for our staff and how big of a war room that we need to fit all of our people to be able to do these, when we come together to work scenes, if we can just put a list and then give it to an architect to say, hey, what can you put something together here and create, do their part. But I think it would be who of us to list the needs that we have, as you're insinuating, list the needs that we have and the number and the sizes of things that we need, and then let them run with it.
Absolutely. And I'm not on that committee. Joel's going to do that for the commissioner side. That war room, in my opinion, is something that should not be cut by 1 square foot.
I would agree with that. When we did the tornadoes, and we're down there in EMA, the entire fire station's standing outside of the building trying to hear what's going on. We're being separated up there. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need that room. I was all
That is for the county.
corner and the EMA and getting everybody under one roof. If we gotta go like that, that's fine. But the meeting room, war room, whatever you wanna call it, is, when we went up there to Fulton County, that was huge. That was a nice room. Doesn't have to be exactly that size, maybe not, but we definitely need something in an emergency situation, because the emergency responders, it was a disaster trying to work out of Jack's building.
Yep. So that's my request, and I'll let Joel deal with that when it comes that time, but I'm sure he feels the same way.
Alan?
Get a couple things. I'm curious what this property down here, 46 is on this going forward.
Can't hear you, Alan.
There's no way you can't hear me. I've been doing the whole meeting the entire time. This property down here on the end, I'm curious why it's still on the board. The last time we spoke, it was declared it was too small, but we can work with it. You can't go to the north, you can't go to the west, you can't go to the east. I question the water matrix of that piece of property. I just walked across the field on the west side the other day when there's some lines. So I question the watering of that location. I think there's some other building properties in that as well, but, so I'm still curious why that's still on the board. We had a good EMA room for a long time. For some reason, we changed that, put the maintenance man in. We bought storage units. That was supposed to fit the process. Now it doesn't fit the process. Seems like we spent an awful lot of money. I'll say we're wasting a lot of money. And it just keeps going on and on and on and on and on. And I've said this many times, and I'm gonna say it again, I don't think anybody seems to care, but I'm gonna say it. I talked to 2 more county employees today who are eating out of food banks. County employees are eating out of food banks. I've said it before, nothing's changed, I guess you don't care. It's embarrassing. I feel for those people.
Anyone else?
Gary, on the floodplain there, I went to DNR and they gave me this, it's a little bit different, but the bank is still the same across the street, it's all ocean blue. And I asked them the question, I said, well, this is ocean blue and it's flooded across the highway. And the bank's the 2% of the fringe of the flood. And they asked me, are you gonna dig a hole and build a jail in a hole? And I said, no. I said, okay, you have no issues. I said, well, what about future issues? And they said, even with, now, and I'm no floodplain expert, but even in the 100-year flood, we would be okay in the pink area where we're at with the storage units. So I asked them about the blue here, and I said, well, this is total flood. And they said, absolutely. I said, then why are they building now in this floodplain? Why? Why are they allowed to build over there? And he said, they simply just raised up the elevation.
And that's where we would be with the jail. If FEMA plays a part in DNR, and I'm just telling you what I know from what I've learned, if they raised that, we could still build in there. We would just have to elevate the building, which would be an additional cost to elevate that building. So,
But with that being said, if that is something that is, with DNR accepting that, with this size jail he's wanting to build, it fits on that piece of property because it's right here. It's already been done.
is that 30,000 square feet?
It's probably smaller, because this adds more rooms and stuff
Right.
like that, but with that property being paid for and stuff like that, I think, like I say, I know you're gonna go through every aspect and every corner of it, but if that deems that property is safe to build on for the next 100 years, even if we play, change the flood map 2 foot higher, and we can build upon that or where that property is always paid.
But if we can trade for this one, that's the better deal.
That's
Yeah.
good offer.
Any other comments?
So wouldn't there be additional costs we use that again, because we still have to house the inmates for 24 months, and we still have to demo all that down. I don't think the demo cost was probably included in any of the
Well,
construction costs.
on this one here in 2021, we built a new jail, we walked the inmates from the old jail to the new jail, then you decided what you want to do with the old jail. That's what's on this one, but a lot has changed since 2021.
Correct.
And that's why I think that $2 million that we have is so important. I and my brothers, I think we should look at financing the amount of the jail and keep the money that we have for incidentals, because we're looking
I agree.
Unless it buys down the interest rate.
Yeah, I mean, I could say exactly, but.
Yeah, and that money could do that, absolutely. I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Sheila Reeves would like to be on the committee. She sent me a text, so we'll add her to that. That'll make 6. Thank everyone for being here, appreciate it. Susan is